Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome in Fantasy Life right here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you on this Monday, back and better than ever, Adam, because we've got the NFL draft just days away, and we are so excited to be here back on the weekdays, back in the morning. Like, we're ready to go, Adam. How's it going? How you doing?
It's going well, nice and early, and yes, a flashback to when we were on weekdays, and it's a big event. They had to pull us in NFL Draft Week. Getting you ready obviously has major implications for fantasy football, and we're here to get you ready for it.
I'm excited. Are you excited? Because here's the thing. I think we've talked about this before. These days leading up until the draft, anything can happen with your team. So you're just optimistic. You're happy. You're ready to go. You say the Seattle Seahawks won't mess this up, and they're definitely going to draft some offensive linemen to help protect Sam Darnold. Like there's things going on there. It's the same thing with the Cowboys. They're not going to pass up on a running back ever again. It's never going to happen. That's why it's exciting these next couple of days, because we can wish and hope for what's going to happen, and then I'm sure draft night comes and our hearts are broken. But that's a whole different story that we'll talk about later.
Yeah, it is like Christmas in a way, because you're waiting for those gifts. You want to unwrap them, and you're just hoping you get something good from your team. And there's a lot of rumors out there. We know leading up to the draft, that week or two, there's so many things that come out of nowhere. And there's always surprises. We saw it last year. We've seen it in many drafts. So if you're a fan of a team, you're hoping they do what you think is best to help them get in contention and potentially win a Super Bowl. And of course, for fantasy, you're hoping that some of the talented players go in landing spots where we can hope they achieve greatness.
We just think of all our fantasy teams. That's what we'll tell all the coaches this week. We'll just say, think about the fantasy teams. Don't worry about it. Team needs? Who needs that? Just get wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, and we're going to be totally fine. But again, we're excited to have everyone here with us today. Again, I have to remind you all, fantasylife.com. That's where you want to go. You're listening to us right now, but if you want a little bit more draft information, go to fantasylife.com. Dwayne McFarland has had the rookie supermodel up for a couple months now, and Thor Nystrom has dropped the Thor 500, which again, he's put so much work into that. He's got his big board of 500 players, comps for every single one as well. So if you really want to get into the NFL draft this season, head over to fantasylife.com and go and check that out. I wanted to start today, Adam, with draft rumors, because we hear these rumors all the time. We usually talk about them in the water cooler, but I think now is the perfect time to go through some draft rumors, see if we believe them or not, and see, just how much we think that this could actually happen. So I want to get started with the first one that's picked up steam in the last couple of days, and that is that Tyler Shuck is potentially a first-round draft pick, which if you asked us 2 months ago, or even maybe 2 weeks ago, I don't know, we would have rolled our eyes and said there's absolutely no way. But Diana Rossini put out an article over the weekend, The Athletic, saying that a current head coach really actually believes that Tyler Shuck is the best quarterback in this draft class, better than Cam Ward, better than Shedeur Sanders. And then there was a little bit more smoke here, Adam, when Tom Pelissero wrote an article about potential surprise first rounders. Shuck's name popped up again. I can't picture it, but again, it's the NFL. They love drama. And maybe he goes to one of those teams like the Steelers, who don't want to wait on Aaron Rodgers anymore. Maybe it's the Saints, and they actually are really worried about Derek Carr's shoulder. There's a couple of ways where he could potentially go in the first round, but I'd be shocked. What do you think?
I would be surprised too. And all it takes is one team, one organization to have that feeling and decide to move up or take him in the first round. But I would be surprised. I mean, he'll turn 26 during the NFL season. Injuries, I think, are a big concern for him as well. He's had a history of injuries going back to 2021, broke his collarbone, 2022, shoulder injury that he missed games there, 2023, broke his leg. So, I mean, that's part of the reason why he's been around so long. But, just very streaky as a passer. And we know it's not a great quarterback class to begin with. So I would be surprised that anytime you start hearing these rumors from a few different sources, there obviously is something there. But again, sometimes these things don't pan out. But just last year, everyone was surprised when Michael Penix went to Atlanta, right? So
yeah, and now look at them. Now they look like the smartest people in the room, right? Well, maybe. We'll see. They still have to go a full season.
Well, it's not. It doesn't look as bad as when people were just ripping it to shreds when it happens. Like, wait, you just paid Kirk Cousins. What are you doing? And then Kirk Cousins played football, and They looked like they were smart.
I wanted Kirk Cousins to work out so badly there, like really badly. And it just, yeah, they look, I mean, look, for what it's worth, like you just said, the Michael Penix pick, everyone was shocked. I remember we were live that night too, and it was on YouTube for Fantasy Life, and it was crazy. And that's why I say anything's possible on draft night, because teams could get, a little bit antsy trying to get their quarterback. But don't you agree, though, that if there was going to be a quarterback, so Cam Ward is the overall QB1 in this class, according to a lot of these guys that are coming out and doing their mock drafts, and then it's Shedeur Sanders at QB2. When we talk to Thor Nystrom later on in the show, he's going to tell us why Shedeur Sanders is his QB1. But then I could see where it could be a toss-up at him. If some team really does have Tyler Shuck above, let's say, Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe, and one of those teams, like I just said, the Saints or the Steelers, decide, you know what, we cannot keep doing this anymore. We need to go out and get a quarterback. We need some insurance just in case. Then that's the way I see it. But I really do think it hinges on those two teams, unless it's the Vikings. But I don't think they'd use their first round pick. They've got JJ McCarthy there. But we've talked about this before. They don't really have a backup. And Aaron Rodgers has also been linked to him. But from what Aaron Rodgers said on the Pat McAfee show just a couple of days ago, it doesn't look like he's going to make a decision anytime soon. So maybe the Steelers or the Saints have to think to themselves, well, if we're not going to wait for that decision, we have to go a different direction.
Well, those are the two teams that we know are potentially looking for a quarterback. But then you have teams at the end of the first round or teams early in the second round that might want to trade up to the end of the first round to get a quarterback. So that's where it potentially could come into play. But it doesn't feel like there's that many teams that need quarterbacks outside of the two. So it would come down to someone late first round, or say a team like the Giants that have an eye on one of the quarterbacks and say, all right, we didn't get a quarterback with our first pick. We want to trade up to the late first round and get a quarterback. That's potentially where you could see a scenario happen.
Or Cleveland maybe coming back into the first, right? So Cleveland right now has the second overall pick in this year's NFL draft. A lot of people have Travis Hunter going to them before. Just a month ago, it was them getting a quarterback and it was them taking Shedeur Sanders. But that has kind of cooled off since then. And so them getting Travis Hunter and saying to themselves, well, we have, Joe Flacco and we have Kenny Pickett. That's not going to do it for us going into 2025. We need a quarterback. Trading back into the first round, I could see them doing that as well. Imagine if they were able to pull off a Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, like come back into the first round, get Shedeur Sanders, pair him back up with Travis Hunter. That would be kind of crazy.
Yeah, Sanders is a big question in this draft. And you mentioned it before, just a month, 2 months ago, everyone was projecting him to go early. Now, will the Saints take him at 9? Will they pass on him if he falls? Are the Steelers interested at 21? If not, then you could see the scenario that you just presented, where he falls to late first round and Cleveland says, yes, let's trade up and get him.
Man, that would be nuts. All right, so that's the first rumor going around. Tyler Shuck, potential first-round draft pick. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. The second rumor I had to bring up because it's your Dallas Cowboys. No longer, I don't know, America's team still? America's team, the Dallas Cowboys? I don't know. I think the Lions might be in there, and maybe the Washington Commanders could be a sneaky one as well.
No, wait, hold up.
What?
Washington, after one good year, you're putting Washington
sneaky.
there? No.
I said sneaky.
Oh, okay.
A couple years, maybe they become.
No,
I think it's
yet.
the Lions. No, I don't think it's.
I don't think there's any America's team, but we'll leave the Cowboys there for now. Well, that's because
it used to be Dallas, and now you're sad that it's not. I think it's the Lions. It has to be the Lions. People love Dan Campbell. People love Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've got David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. I think it's them, unfortunately.
And they haven't won in so long.
Yes, you have to root for the underdogs, except they continue to make the playoffs. So it's, I don't know. Okay, all I'm saying is the Dallas Cowboys, will put in parentheses America's team there, could trade away their first round pick. This one I don't think this one is as crazy as when you look at it, because they could potentially trade back in this year's NFL draft. And I don't think I'd be shocked. I'm curious if you would, but they right now hold the 12th overall pick in the draft. And I think you and I have talked about this before. I think that 9 to 12 range is going to be pivotal pivotal in this year's draft. I think that's going to make a huge difference of when teams start to pick up the phone. They say, all right, New Orleans Saints, what do you need? Chicago Bears, Dallas Cowboys. So it's not something that we're not used to with Jerry Jones in these drafts, but I do agree that it's something, especially if they are really trying to go running back here and they say, listen, we can still get a very good running back and we can get more picks to help, shore up our everything on this team. I think that's something that we could see them do.
I wouldn't be surprised, especially if it gets to 12, they're on the clock, and no one is there that stands out to them.
Yep.
And they might want multiple picks in the middle rounds. They don't have a fourth-round pick. So that's probably why, because, they could use, obviously, a running back, a receiver, a cornerback. So they might say, you know what? We can still get a good player that we really like, have high on our boards if we trade the 12 and move down a few spots, whether it's to 17, 19, 20. I'm just throwing potential outcomes there. Pick up another pick maybe in round 3 or round 4, get a fourth-round pick to cover several needs. So it's certainly a possibility unless someone falls that they didn't expect. I mean, everyone was saying Ashton Genty, but it seems unlikely that's going to happen. Whether the Raiders take him or even the Bears or maybe another team in there, or someone even trades up if they see Genty fall. So I doubt that happens. And then it's a question of, okay, is there a good enough running back that they like there? Is there, maybe there's an offensive lineman they're eyeing that they feel they can get, 18, 19, 20. So that is definitely a possibility. And they just said it's more likely they trade down than up. And they have multiple needs. From a fantasy perspective, we all want it to be a running back or receiver. They clearly need help opposite CeeDee Lamb. And Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, not going to cut it. But we thought the same thing last year, and they went into the year with Ezekiel Elliott.
But they didn't cut it. Like, let's be honest, they didn't cut it. It's just that they just
Rico Dowdle was good, but it took till midway through the year.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that at that pick, right, at that pick that the Dallas Cowboys have, that they could get a call from the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. And then, like I said, then they get a couple other picks. You can get some depth in this year's draft. We talked about this before, but The Athletic put out, teams that have drafted well over the past 5 years, and they came in at number 5. So their drafts have been pretty solid going these last 5 years. So I could see it. My dream scenario, though, Adam, is them doing the unthinkable and trading up to get Ashton Genty. Wouldn't that be fun? Come on. Trade up and get Ashton Genty, and they've been in the news for such awful things like no offense, like hiring Brian Schottenheimer. Like, they've just been in the news and they've been scrutinized. And now Jerry sees the opportunity to go up there, get a running back that everyone's going to talk about forever. That'd be fun.
I just don't see it happening. Again,
they haven't
been worried about making that splash. Again, last year we were sitting there every single round. All right, the Cowboys got to take a running back now. No. All right, they're definitely going to do it next round. They're not doing it, and they just never did. So I don't think they're concerned about making that splash at this point. They don't spend any money in free agency anymore, or a significant amount. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did trade down, get multiple picks.
Yeah. I'm just trying to make it fun. Come on, call the Las Vegas Raiders and go get Genty at 6. Who says no? Just kidding. Adam Ronis says no. He says, don't do that. Just don't expect it. That's what you've come to, that's what's happened now to you, though. You're just like, I don't expect it, and they're probably going to break my heart. So it's fine there. But that is definitely one rumor that I could see happening, and there's been quotes from them anyway. So maybe that's something we watch out for during draft night. The last one, this is not necessarily a rumor, but I did write about this at fantasylife.com if you guys all want to go and check out that article. But I was curious about the Bills, the Buffalo Bills, and what they could be doing in this year's draft. And I was looking at them potentially getting another running back, because I will say there's been back and forth between the team and James Cook. I remember you and I talked about him. He just told everyone he wanted $15 million. And that's kind of where it started. They haven't resolved this contract issue. And I will say, he's entering the final year of his rookie contract. He's going to make $5.3 million at this time. time. And Ian Rappaport even tweeted saying that the situation isn't great right now, but that Cook will still be back in Buffalo to play for this upcoming season. No running back, Adam, drafted during Brandon Beane's time as general manager, has received a second contract from Buffalo. So if we're following history here, not necessarily saying in the first round, but maybe they get some company for James Cook over there in the backfield.
Or they trade him too. That's other rumors that I've seen too, that he could be dealt as well, because like you said, they just seem that they don't want to sign him to a contract. And you could understand why James Cook wants to get paid coming off of last season.
Yeah.
You got to get that money. So it doesn't seem like it's going to happen from the Bills. Like you said, they just don't do it. So they're probably looking to be, I mean, they have Ray Davis there who looked pretty good last year.
They weren't bad. Those backups weren't bad.
Yeah. And Ty Johnson's there too. That's the other thing too. You know, if that's why I think it would have to be a trade if they were to add another running back in the draft. So it is something to keep an eye on, though.
$15 million, though. That puts him like around Jonathan Taylor, CMC, Kamara, Josh Jacobs. That's a lot of money.
And they don't, we've talked about it a lot, especially throughout the season. If you ask most people right now, how many carries did James Cook have last year? They're going to get it wrong, because they're all going to say, oh, like 240, 250. He had 207.
I was going to say, it's nothing compared to the guys that we've talked about at the top. Saquon, Jacobs, Kyron, those guys from last season.
If you had Cook on your fantasy team, you know, because there were weeks that, now there were some games where there were blowouts, but there were too many weeks where he just didn't get enough volume. And Ty Johnson was cutting into his passing down work. He had 32 receptions on 38 targets. And the frustrating part is when you watch them and you see Cook, you see his explosive ability. You could see the big numbers he could put up, but the Bills just didn't overwork him at all. They liked limiting his touches, and I think that's why Cook knows. He was like, yeah, look, I had 18 touchdowns. Pay me now.
Because he knows it's not happening again. He's like, look, let me just get paid now from what I did last season. And I understand it too. When you are able to make that kind of noise and you come in and you're only making $5.3 million final year of your contract, you want to get paid. And you and I are very much pro, like, yeah, pay your guys, get paid, do whatever. I like the call out though for a potential James Cook trade before during the NFL draft, because when it was Devin Singletary coming up on the final year of his contract, they drafted Cook in the second round, and it feels like maybe they could be in the same situation. It's just something to look at. And on the other side, Adam, that doesn't also help James Cook. This is a deep running back class. We're going to be talking about that with Thor Nystrom, with Connor Rogers. Like, this is a deep running back class where they could say, hey, listen, we're not going to pay you $15 million. We're actually going to ship you away and get someone else on here. So that's another rumor that maybe I made up, but it's a rumor nonetheless. It's starting right here at Fantasy Life on Sirius XM. We're going to start the rumor and see, maybe not the first round, but see if they do go out and add another running back there. All right, we're going to continue on here. Again, fantasylife.com. That is where you want to go to subscribe to our newsletter and check out all of those articles that I've been talking about. You've got the rookie supermodel from Dwayne McFarland, and you've got Thor Nystrom's Thor 500 that is live right now. We're going to be talking to the one and only Connor Rogers, breaking down, his favorite picks potentially in this draft, some landing spots as well. We're going to do that coming up next. NFL Draft Edition, Fantasy Life, right here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Kendall Valenzuela, Adam Ronis with you again. Excited to be back and breaking down the NFL Draft just days away. And Adam, I don't know who better to talk to about the upcoming NFL Draft than the one and only Connor Rogers, NBC Sports. Connor, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us. How's it going? How you doing?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me. How are you holding up?
Hey, listen, we're good. I was going to ask you, my first question is just, what nice vacation do you have planned? You've been talking about these guys since December, November, and now it's all coming up really fast. So I'm hoping you have a nice vacation plan, whether it's Bahamas, Hawaii. I hope it's something good.
Oh, Kendall, the Fantasy Football Happy Hour is off to Kentucky to do a show from the Derby track as the NBC Life rolls on, and then we'll see from there. Something fun will be in there. But you know what you forget with all of this is you talk about these guys for 11 months, and then they go to teams. And everyone's like, well, now what? Can we project them? What's the fit? What drafts do you like? There's still weeks of work left somehow. The draft truly just never ends. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, there we go. We're excited again to have you again, Connor Rogers, NBC Sports here. So I'm curious. I have to ask first because we're going to ask you about all the potential fantasy football players. So when it comes to Travis Hunter, this feels like the most interesting conversation because if people are drafting right now, they say to themselves, "Do I take a risk and draft Travis Hunter, not knowing where he's going to land?" He plays cornerback, he plays wide receiver, and it really, Connor, feels like depending on what team he gets drafted to, that's when we're going to know really which one he plays more of. So my question is, would he be your wide receiver one if he was saying, "I'm going to be a full-time receiver in the NFL"? Would he be ahead of Teteroa McMillan for you?
He would be, which is really saying something. I think Tet is a really solid prospect. Obviously, we were spoiled last year. I thought, all of those guys would carry higher grades than Tet did, but Tet is still a first-round wide receiver. But Hunter would enter the equation last year of, with those guys, right? Marv, Malik Neighbors. I really liked Brian Thomas Jr. I really liked Roma Dunze and think good things are ahead for him. I thought those four were pretty special prospects, and Hunter would be in that conversation. I mean, I don't throw out lofty player comparisons. Like, I usually low bar them, but for him, I had to drop the Ocho Cinco one.
Ooh.
I just think that, and I mean, Ocho, of course, had a seven seasons of 1,000+ yards, which is that'd be lofty expectations for Hunter. But you're not saying that's what he's going to do statistically. That's just the play style and the style of the player. If he was only a wide receiver, really good route runner, twitchy, obviously slender players, but they just have these incredible ball skills, ball winners. Hunter, and you know what? Hunter's been so vocal about this. I agree with you. It feels like landing spot is really going to dictate how valuable he is in fantasy. But it feels like that out of the gate of this rookie contract, he's going to play as much offense as he could possibly handle no matter what.
If you exclude Travis Hunter from the wide receiver conversation, would you have Tech McMillan as your number one? And if so, how do you project him in the NFL?
Yeah, I would. He reminds me of Cortland Sutton. Just, big-bodied builds, obviously guys that can climb the ladder, but are better route runners than given credit for because they're so big that it might not look like how a Stephon Diggs or a Josh Downs or a guy like that runs a route because they're obviously going to be a little bit more leggy. But McMillan is a hard-nosed player. He's tough. He's a good route runner. He's been productive across 3 seasons now. He's still young. He, to me, stands alone if Hunter is not in this wide receiver class. Like, I think there is a gap. And I like Emeka Ibuka a lot. I like Jaden Higgins a lot. I think it's a different conversation with Matthew Golden and Luther Burden. I think people are a little higher on those guys than I would be, but they're still top 40 kind of picks. But McMillan is somebody that can play obviously thrive on the perimeter. There's just not a lot of prospects consistently year in and year out that could do that. A lot of these guys have to play inside and outside to have success. So I look at McMillan, and if he went into a situation, like say Dallas, for instance, took him in the top 15, and CeeDee Lamb is going to get his, but the amount of targets they have just piled on CeeDee, obviously they would prefer not to have to do that. They want him to be their number one guy, but they'd like to have some kind of option across from him. If McMillan can play the perimeter for them while CeeDee plays the slot and be a really effective red zone presence. So I like McMillan a lot, and I'm kind of surprised how the narrative has turned on him in the draft community over the last 6 weeks.
In a bad way? Like they're saying, hey, he's not very good. He should be someone that we really shouldn't be trying to target in drafts.
Maybe it's unfair to say the draft community because I think there's still, draft analysts that like him, but I don't think he's going to be the first wide receiver taken. And I can't sit here and confidently say he's going to be a top 20 pick anymore. And I value him that way, but it's pretty evident the NFL is higher on a player like Matthew Golden after the NFL Combine. And I would imagine he's going to be the first receiver taken over Tet.
Well, since you say that, Connor, I'm curious. And again, we're talking with Connor Rogers right now, NBC Sports. Does it feel like there's from everything that you've done, and you've been going through these guys for months and months and months, like you said, does it feel like there's fewer marquee prospects than usual? Like, is the talent in this year's draft just a little bit lower than usual? Because we've talked, we've heard a lot about how deep this running back class is, but then you get to the wide receivers, like you just said about Ted McMillan, and you say, hey, there's this huge tier drop off where teams might, want to wait. Have you seen that in everything that you've done leading up to this?
Yeah, it's a weird balance, right? Because it lacks blue chip talent, and last year was blue chip talent galore. It was so good that Brock Bowers wasn't taken in the top 10. I mean, that's just utterly ridiculous. I don't think we'll have a tight end prospect like Bowers for a long time. So, but and in this class, the blue chip talent to me is Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, and then it kind of opens up. And last year, you'd probably rip through 10 names when you're talking about the blue chip talent. Now, the counter side of it is with all of these guys in college now being able to play 5, 6, you'll get a couple rare ducks that play 7 years because of COVID eligibility, injury eligibility, transfer eligibility. Good luck keeping up with any of it. I try my absolute best, but this is a really big class in terms of round 3 players. Like, there could be round 3 players available in the 5th round, even at the top of the 6th round. And what that means is there's a lot of guys that profile as number 3 wide receivers. There's a lot of guys that are going to fit into, back, like committee backs. There's going to be a lot of tight ends that could be tight end 2s. And that's valuable in the NFL. There's a lot of starters or role players, but there's not these alpha, typical, like how we projected Malik Neighbors last year. We knew wherever Malik went, it's like this guy is just going to dominate the offense he's in. We just don't have a lot of examples of that in this class. So it's weird. It's more of a volume class, but that blue chip talent is just not the same as previous years.
Pretty much everyone has Ashton Genty as the RB1 in this class. How far behind is Omarion Hampton?
Not very far, and I love Genty. I mean, he is my number 3 overall player, but I have Hampton at 12, and I guess that's as high as you'll see him. I think people are a little low on valuing the running back, but that's starting to turn a little bit. Hampton is really, really special. The fact that he can carry 220 pounds is playing weight, take it to the house. He's so physical in everything he does, from pass pro, which will keep him on the field, really good after the catch. He could just stick his foot in the ground and run through defenders. And it's not just safeties and corners. He could run through linebackers consistently. So he's somebody to me that you just look at, the style, and he's just ready to go for 25 touches out of the gate. And obviously you could say the same thing about Genty, but these two guys, wherever they go, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that they're top 10 running backs in the NFL as rookies. It's really not. That's just how good they are.
Oh, speaking our language right now for fantasy football, that's what we like to hear. I can't go through this with you, Connor, and not ask you about Shedeur Sanders and just what you've seen throughout this process with him. It feels like, Connor, you either have to love him or hate him, and there's like no in between. Can we just like Shedeur Sanders? Can we say maybe he's going to be good? It just feels like there's such a split on him, and I'm curious, what you've seen to make it be that way with Shedeur Sanders.
I think you just put it perfectly, Kendall, and that's the issue at hand. And of course it's the issue at hand. He's Deion's son. There's a lot of noise around him. It's kind of funny. Most of the time, the way Shedeur carries himself does not really align with everything else around him, right? Like, Deion's generally pretty loud. The narratives around Shedeur, obviously, as well. But, to me, he's a fine potential starting quarterback. When people ask me for player comps, I'm like, you're going to get Teddy Bridgewater when he was healthy, Andy Dalton on the Bengals. That's the kind of quarterback. And people they almost gasp when you say that to them. Like, it's the most disrespectful thing in the world. And I think people forget, number one, the quarterback hit rate, or the lack thereof, in the NFL. Like, just not everybody is going to be very good that's drafted in the first 2 rounds of quarterback. Honestly, a lot of people are going to be pretty bad. And then number 2, Shedeur has an oddly high floor in certain areas. He's very accurate. He doesn't have an overwhelming arm. He's not that big. He's not that fast. He throws with touch and timing at all 3 levels of the field. When things are right in that offense and the protection is right, he can throw a catch and run ball to his receivers to set them up for success, especially on those shallow crossers. You could see him roll out and not run, but kind of reset the pocket and take chances down the field, especially to Travis Hunter. And why wouldn't you? But, when he gets to the NFL, he's not going to run away from edge defenders consistently. Some of those tight window throws, they better be thrown with anticipation all the time, because the juice on the ball isn't going to be the same as some of the top guys in the league. And that's okay. Basically, what I'm saying is Shedeur will most likely be as good as his environment allows him to be. Where I look at Cam Ward can overcome bad environments. Cam Ward started at Incarnate Ward, transferred up to Washington State, transferred up to Miami. And the consistent thing with Cam Ward is how drastically better he made every situation that he went to because of his ability to do the special stuff with his arm and with his legs. So, yeah, I like Shedeur Sanders. I don't love Shedeur Sanders, and I think that's how the NFL is going to look at this as well. I don't think he's going to go in the top 20 picks. Could I be surprised? You could always be surprised at quarterback, but I think at the end of the day, logic always prevails in the draft, and that's kind of where we're going with this quarterback class as a whole. It's not just him, but it's the same for Jackson Dart.
Yeah, you could say the same for the receiver class for many people. Is there a receiver that you think could go in the middle to later rounds that maybe you're higher on than others, and explain why?
That's always a fun one. 2 for me, Andrew Armstrong from Arkansas. If you want one of those perimeter guys, he's somebody that he just plays the game with a different intensity. He catches the ball away from his body. He has the size to play in the NFL at that level. He was really, really productive in the SEC. Like, that's the kind of guy where you look at and you go, why doesn't anybody care about this guy? It's just very odd to me with the kind of season he had. And once again, the brand of football he plays. And, you know, he kind of reminds me of Tim Patrick a little bit. And before he got hurt, Tim Patrick, there was a lot to like there with Armstrong, about 6'4", over 200 pounds, 4.5 speed, 37.5-inch vertical, pretty good agilities as well. I mean, 1,100 yards in the SEC this year is nothing to kind of turn your head to. And then one more would be Elijah Badger out of Florida. He's someone to me that just, when you watch him play, his really, really good plays to me stand out, where you can see the route running, you can see the swiftness, obviously the body control and the toe tapping as well. So those are two guys to me. I actually have them back to back, Badger at 14 and Andrew Armstrong at wide receiver 15. Like, depending where they go, they're going to be guys that should be able to carve out wide receiver 3 roles sometime in the first 2 or 3 years of their career.
Awesome. Well, Connor, appreciate you joining us and breaking down this NFL draft. Hopefully you either go on vacation or get some much needed sleep that I'm sure everyone knows that you need, but we appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate you having me. Have a great week. All right.
Awesome. There he goes. Connor Rogers, NBC Sports. We're going to come back and talk with the one and only Thor Nystrom, breaking down that Thor 500 coming up next. Okay, fantasy football fans, sure, NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it. And all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. We are so excited to have Thor Nystrom joining us now, breaking down the Thor 500, which is live at fantasylife.com. You heard it right, Thor 500, guys, that you also comped, by the way, because this is your Christmas, this is your New Year's, this is your every holiday wrapped into one. How's it going? How you doing?
Yeah, happy football Christmas week to you, Kendall. I'm doing great. We got the 500 board in, like you mentioned, 500 comps. So yeah, folks, go and check that out on Fantasy Life.
All right, well, let's get right into it again because the Thor 500, again, so much work has gone into that. I want to start actually with the receiver that I know you and I have talked about before, but, you know, after Tetairoa McMillan, and we can throw in Travis Hunter as well if he was going to be a full-time wide receiver, Matthew Golden feels like for the months that we've been talking about him, his draft stock has just continued to go up and up and up. He is your wide receiver 2 in this draft right now. I mean, how early do you think he could go in this draft on Thursday?
Yeah, maybe as early as 12. I don't know if he could go above that, but to Dallas, potentially at 12. And if you're in Golden's camp, you're rooting for Tetairoa McMillan, of course, to go in the top 10, you know, as early as possible. Tetairoa starts falling. I think that's where both receivers get pushed on the board, and that's where the scenario potentially comes up of only having 2 wide receivers, period, in the first round, if you don't consider Travis Hunter that. With Igbuka and Burden falling into the second round. But I would say 12 is probably where it starts. And Golden's definitely going in the first round. You know, probably around 25 would be around the lowest that, you know, that he could end up falling. But I would think it'd be somewhere in there.
But you've had a great comp to him with Garrett Wilson. I mean, for fantasy football, we're like, okay, let's sign us up for any comp that you say, hey, Garrett Wilson is the guy that I attribute him to.
I think Golden's going to be a really good number 2 in the NFL. Because he can play on the boundary despite his frame. His release package is awesome. So he's getting off the line and he's starting out with a head start every rep, and then he can win at all 3 levels. You know, that's again, you know, concerns about his frame. For me, they're mitigated by those 2 facts. We know he's not going to get jammed at the next level, and we know that, again, he can win at all 3 levels, very reliable. So, yeah, that's how I see him at the next level, where, the CB1 is on the other receiver. You're not being double teamed, and we know that Matthew Golden gets separation. He has one of the highest separation rates in this class.
Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, you have 4th overall. What makes you so high on him?
because he's going to manufacture offense at the next level. It's like Brock Bowers, but like sort of a multiplier on it. It's Brock Bowers if he was 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier. It's just a bigger version of that, but it's the same sort of thing where you saw the college team go the extra mile to manufacture touches for him in the running game, end arounds with Warren as well. They had a lot of packages with him as the Wildcat quarterback. He's a fabulous runner. He averaged 9 yards per carry last season and had a whole bunch of broken tackles on the attempts that he had. And there's some teeth as well with him as a Wildcat quarterback because he actually came into college as a big dual threat left-handed quarterback. That's where originally he was going to go to Virginia Tech, and then Penn State got in on him late as a potential replacement for Will Levis, who they knew was going to be transferring out because he was stuck behind Sean Clifford, and they needed another big mobile quarterback. But Tyler Warren, he completes passes when, sometimes on those trick plays, but manufacture him touches within 8 yards of the line of scrimmage, and he's a yak machine. He's a monster with the ball in his hands. He's just a berserker out there. So that's what you're going to get from him. He can certainly win intermediate, and then it's just the yak jukebox.
For Tyler Warren, and I'll throw in Colston Loveland, because for fantasy football, Thor, there's just been the past couple seasons. We had a Brock Bowers last year. We had a Sam Laporta the year before that. I mean, some of these rookie tight ends have shown us that they can perform depending on where they go. Do you think we get that level of play depending on where Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland go for 2025? Could we get another Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta?
Tyler Warren's going to be a fantasy stud from day one. It's going to be the same thing as Brock Bowers. But like I said, I think he's a slightly better version of that because he's bigger. Loveland is somewhat tied to the context that he's going into. I assume he is going to be going to a 12 personnel offense as their move tight end, as the big slot kind of a guy who can also play on the boundary. You can, if you're doing two tight ends on the line situationally, that he can play in line just like that, but like you don't want him there regularly. He's more of a finesse player. He's kind of a skyscraper. So against power ends, he's going to get ragdolled. But as the receiver, just really gifted. He runs a full wide receiver's complement of routes, a full wide receiver route tree, wins at all three levels. He has the enormous catch radius and very fluid for a guy that big. He'll catch balls outside the frame in spirit and keep running, converts from receiver to runner really, really seamlessly. But for a guy like that, you need to be in the more advanced passing offense, and you have to find the right situation to be fantasy relevant to the degree that we want initially. So that one's more tied to circumstance, whereas Tyler Warren's going to put up bazooka numbers next year no matter where he goes because you can get him the ball so easy, and they will. That's how good he is.
We see Shedeur Sanders, people's evaluations all over the place. You have him as your QB1, one spot ahead of Cam Ward. What do you like about Sanders?
Elite accuracy, elite placement with a player that takes care of the football. Shedeur Sanders' turnover-worthy play rate last year was 1/3 what Cam Ward's was. So, I mean, right there. And then, again, the accuracy and the placement. His adjusted accuracy was one of the highest in that BS last year. That's been a solid trade of his going back years and years, a defining trade, I should say. And over the body of work, the 4 years that Sanders was a starter, Ward was 4+ or 5- because there was the one truncated season at the beginning. But over the entire body, Shedeur Sanders was certainly better than Cam Ward. Last year, when statistically it was Cam Ward, he was in a far better situation than Shedeur Sanders. He was playing with 3 NFL receivers that were all at the combine this year, a round 2 tight end in this class, Elijah Arroyo, and probably a round 3 running back in Damian Martinez behind a good offensive line. Shedeur Sanders had Travis Hunter, and they had a couple other okay receivers, but playing behind a terrible offensive line with no running game there to support him. So defense could tee off on him and tee off on a bad offensive line in the pass rush.
Best case scenario, Thor, for you, what's the best case scenario landing spot for Shedeur Sanders in your mind?
The Cleveland Browns.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if he ends up falling right and he gets into the teens, that's where to watch out for the Browns potentially swing up. The Browns have a ton of picks, either 10 or 11, but they have the number 33 pick, the first pick of the second, and they have either the second or the third pick of round 3, and they have an additional round 3 pick to that. So that's why if Shedeur gets into the teens, it becomes potentially realistic for them to do that. And of course, Cleveland will be taking his teammate, Mr. Travis Hunter Jr. at number 2. So that's where that could get really intriguing. I think if Cleveland is not able to do that, if they don't get access to Sanders because he goes higher or the trade isn't there, maybe a team preempts you. And the Steelers, a team like that, and is able to get ahead, whatever. I think the backup option for Cleveland is Jalen Milroe. The Cleveland Browns' offensive coordinator is Tommy Rees, who was the offensive coordinator for Alabama during by far the most successful stretch of Jalen Milroe's career, down the stretch in 2023 when Jalen Milroe looked like a future #1 overall pick. Jalen Milroe's game devolved down the stretch this past year, but that was in Kalen DeBoer's offense where he was trying to shove the square peg into the round hole. He wanted Milroe to stay in the pocket on the passing concepts, get the ball out. You have to allow Milroe to run as well. He has to have that option on the table for him. That, of course, terrifies defenses as well. And you talk about a deep ball assassin there. The thing that he doesn't have yet, it's throwing short, intermediate, and with nuance. You don't see anticipatory stuff, the layered stuff. You don't see as much touch there. But downfield, he's an assassin. He's going to be one of the best scramblers the NFL's ever seen. So can you build an offense around him that will facilitate those strengths, mitigate the weaknesses? Cleveland Browns got the guy that did that in 2023. So I think he is the backup option.
Amazing. Well, Thor, appreciate you stopping by here again. Everyone needs to go and check out the Thor 500 live at fantasylife.com. This is not the last time we're going to be talking to you, though. We're going to be talking to you all the way up until the NFL draft, but we appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, there he goes again. The Thor 500 live at fantasylife.com, 100% free. We're going to go through some mock draft mayhem, Adam. We did a mock draft with Emery Hunt, myself, Thor Nystrom. Got to go through some of the biggest picks that we saw in that. We're going to do that coming up next. This is Fantasy Life. Excited to be back with you guys. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you. Make sure you're giving us a follow at KValenzuela17, at Adam Ronis over there on Twitter, on X, getting you ready for this upcoming NFL draft. And Adam, a lot of mock drafts going on, but I'm biased. We did one just last week with Emery Hunt and myself and Thor Nystrom, and it was pretty fun. You guys can all go and check that out on our YouTube channel over there. But it was fun, and I will say the first 5 picks, while I do not think this is going to happen, it would be crazy because it's the same conversation that we've been having about Shedeur Sanders with Thor and with Connor Rogers, is that we let Emery Hunt have the first pick. He actually mocked Shedeur Sanders going to the Tennessee Titans, which again would be shocking, but that's just how crazy and how up in the air it is with Shedeur. Like, some people think that he should be going as a top 5 pick. Others don't even have him going in the first round. There's just so much, I almost want to say, like, controversy around it. Like, you either have to love him or hate him, and there's no in between.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great description, because some people say, nope, he should not be a first-round pick. Don't even consider him. And then you have people like Emery and Thor who have him as the QB1. So all it takes, again, is one team to feel that way. But just the way things have transpired and seeing the betting market, it doesn't feel like he's going to go early in this draft.
No, and it's just such a big change from what we've seen over the last couple months, but it's the NFL draft. So, like, in this mock, it was Shedeur Sanders going to Tennessee, Travis Hunter going to Cleveland, and then I was the 3rd overall pick. So I said, listen, if Cam Ward's on the board at 3, the New York Giants are taking Cam Ward. I don't think, to me, Adam, and that's where the interesting part comes in for the Giants, is that I know they have Jameis Winston on that team now. I know they have Russell Wilson. I don't think that means that they're done necessarily at quarterback. I think that means that they're in a safer spot where they don't have to maybe, spend a huge ton of draft capital at the quarterback position. But I do believe that they're potentially not done.
Yeah, for sure. I mentioned earlier, I think they might potentially trade to late first round if there's a quarterback that they have high on their draft board. Clearly, with Cam Ward more than likely going to Tennessee, everyone expects that. They clearly don't have Sanders as a top guy on the board. If they did, or if they thought he was their future quarterback, they would take him at 3, and all indications are that's not going to happen.
Let me throw this one out at you, because during this mock draft again, we had Tedero McMillan taken by the Jets, 7th overall, which again, the Jets have been mocked recently to get more. I've seen a lot of Tyler Warren going to the Jets right now than anything else, but Tedero McMillan for Justin Fields, I think the question is, can Justin Fields, you already have Garrett Wilson over there, is he a good enough fantasy quarterback? NFL quarterback is a whole different conversation when we're talking about Justin Fields, but from a fantasy perspective, can he make both of them viable? And that's kind of where I stand, where I'm just like, I don't know if he can, but I hope he can. But if they get him more weapons, it is better for Justin Fields.
Yeah, I would be surprised because the way teams have utilized Fields is they don't ask him to pass a lot. They're going to rely on the run. He's going to run the ball, and there's just not going to be a lot of pass attempts. He's not reached 400 pass attempts in his career. I mean, the high water mark was 370 over 13 games in 2023 with the Bears. So there's just not enough to go around. They're going to want to run the football. Fields is going to get his touches. They're going to get the ball to Garrett Wilson. So I don't think that would be a good landing spot for McMillan. That's not what you want to see for fantasy.
Do you feel the same way though with the tight end, like Tyler Warren going over there? Do you feel the same, or do you think that's a little bit different?
Yeah, I think it could be a little bit different. We have seen Cole Kmet put up some decent numbers with Justin Fields when he was there, and that is one of the picks that's being discussed for the Jets. You're seeing them often in mocks with Tyler Warren at 7. I think it would be different with a tight end.
Okay, I agree. I think, Ted McMillan, I think there are other places that he can go where we're going to get more excited. I'm someone that's I'm excited about Justin Fields signing with the Jets, being in there with Aaron Glenn. And again, we've talked about this before, but when he's been able to be out there, the fantasy points per game, even though it was 6 games last season, I mean, he had 18.9. He was operating as the QB8 in those situations. So you get him on a team where he doesn't necessarily have to be looking over his shoulder. You have Garrett Wilson there where they are, BFFs, buddies from college days. Like, I'm excited actually to be drafting Justin Fields. And that's again why, Adam, let's say, okay, yeah, they add a Tyler Warren, which would be great, but you just can't keep him out of the top 10, top 12 fantasy quarterbacks just because of the rushing upside as well.
Yeah, 19 rushing touchdowns in 50 career games as well. We talk about it all the time. Those quarterbacks with that high rushing floor, they're valuable for a reason. Fields doesn't even do much in the passing game. He's never had 20 passing touchdowns in his career, but on a per game basis, when he's on the field, he's a QB1 for fantasy. That just illustrates how much we want those rushing quarterbacks. Lamar
Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Justin Fields, only quarterbacks in NFL history to average at least 50 rushing yards per game, and I'm excited about it. In the year 2025, we're excited again about Justin Fields. We're going to continue breaking down this NFL draft. It is time for that Fantasy Life Watercooler, going through all the news and notes that you need to know coming up next. You already know what time it is. Well, we might have to remind you, but it's time for that Fantasy Life Water Cooler, going through all the news and notes that you might have missed here leading up until the NFL draft. Kendall, Valenzuela, Adam, Ronis with you right here. Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. What's your dream scenario? By the way, first, before we get into this, Adam, dream scenario for the Cowboys. What do they do this year to not break your heart, so that we don't have the rejoin saying, don't, like the Cowboys ruin Adam's weekend? What do they need to do to not have that happen?
Well, hopefully it's not as bad as last year, but I definitely want to see a couple of pieces on offense, a running back and a receiver for sure, because they just don't have enough playmakers. You get Dak Prescott healthy, that's fine. They have taken a hit on the offensive line, but they still have some pieces. But there's a lot here that needs to be done, but certainly on offense, because you cannot go into the season with a backfield of Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders. No. It has been said and we see it in the NFL draft, the running back position has been devalued. Obviously, we have great talent, Ashton Genty, so he's going to go early, going in the top 10. You don't see that much anymore, which says a lot. And these teams are just content taking later round running backs and plugging them in and not spending a lot of draft capital or investing money. Goes back to what we talked about with James Cook. Bills are like, why are we going to pay this guy for? He's in the final year of his contract. We'll just do what we have been doing and draft the next running back. So I get it from a certain standpoint, but they've got to add a running back in this draft somewhere. Yeah. It doesn't have to be first round, but they have to add one somewhere. Receiver is going to be a little bit more difficult, obviously, because not as much of a deep class, which is why they're probably going to have to take one early to get an impact one. But I'm just hoping that they draft like they have the last 5 years. You mentioned they've been a top 5 team over the last 5 years in draft picks. It doesn't feel like it for some, but they have done a pretty good job. Of course, they have misses like everyone else. No one is even close to 50%. It's just that difficult to evaluate the talent, find the right guys that plug into the system. And you don't know sometimes with these college athletes, once they get into the NFL and get some money, sometimes the work ethic stops or they start partying and it's all about off the field stuff. So there's so much that goes into a draft pick and what makes them work out. And sometimes there are circumstances you just don't see. But I would definitely like a couple of pieces on offense for sure, because you can't just rely on Dak to CeeDee Lamb all the time.
No, I mean, you could try, but it hasn't. Yeah.
It's great if you have CeeDee Lamb in fantasy, you're loving it, but at the same time, you don't want him to constantly get hit. You want the targets to be there, but you want someone on the other side, especially with some speed. You know, they haven't really had much speed in this offense, and when you don't have that speed and that guy to stretch the defense, it's easier to defend an offense.
That's why I think Matthew Golden fits with you guys so well. And I know that's one of Tedero McMillan, if he's there, whatever, you know, there's some good guys, but Matthew, if you were to go first round receiver, Tedero McMillan was off the board. Matthew Golden to the Dallas Cowboys seems kind of fun. And I know that people are going to look at him, or even NFL teams, and they're going to say, we don't really like his size. But if you want a speedy guy, Matthew Golden, that's where people really started talking more about him when he was over in Indianapolis at the Combine. And he was fast over there, and he doesn't really have a ton of flaws that we can point out in his game. So I think for me, it would be fun. Now, selfishly, I would also like him to go to the Seattle Seahawks, but you and I have talked about this before, where I just think for me to be happy, they need to get some offensive line help, and they need to go out, and whether it's Gray Zabel or whether it's someone else, maybe that falls to them, like they need some help on that offensive line for Sam Darnold specifically. But I don't know, Adam, I really like Matthew Golden, and Thor's talked him up these past couple months. He could be a fun target in the NFL.
Yeah, he is really moving up draft boards. And
he is.
And
his pre-draft process has been amazing. I mean,
it has. And, you know, there's some people that think he could be the first receiver selected in this draft, too. That's
crazy. I don't think that. But that's what Connor Rogers was talking about. People have really, cooled off on Tedero McMillan. I haven't talked about someone Matthew Golden has been going up and up and up these past couple months. Feels like the exact opposite for Ted McMillan, which I think, you know, maybe people just don't need to overthink it. But Tedero McMillan is still going to be a good receiver in this draft. I could see him going to the Carolina Panthers, and we wouldn't bat an eye. We'd say, yeah, that's perfect. Get Bryce Young any help he can. It's the same way. It's the same thing with Luther Burden. I think people have cooled on Luther Burden because they'll say he's a gadgety player, and they're going to look at some of his stats and say, well, that's not going to be sustainable in the NFL. But I still think there's some good receivers in this draft. Now, the tier break is the thing that people have to realize. After, for some, Tedero McMillan, you add Matthew Golden up there, there's a drop off between them and a Luther Burden, an Emeka Egbuka, Jalen Noel out of Iowa State. There's kind of a big drop off there, but still there's talent, and it's exciting to see where these guys go. But I think Matthew Golden, let's get him to the Cowboys. Make Adam happy. Come on.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that definitely looks like a potential landing spot if Dallas again doesn't decide to trade back. But yeah, McMillan is that prototypical X in the NFL, 6'4", 220. He's got the good size, you know, runs routes well for his size as well, and still can make things happen after the catch. So yeah, I like him. I think he's going to be a good pro.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It'll be fun. I'm excited to see where some of these receivers go. You wouldn't be upset if they went receiver first round over running back, or would you, depending on who's on the board?
No, I don't think I would be upset, especially since, again, the receiver class is more thin. So if you're high on one of those guys up top, you take them, and then you still will be able to get a running back in rounds 2 or 3 if that potentially could come in there and command touches in the backfield. So it doesn't have to be a running back early. Obviously, if Genty's there, yeah, but he's not going to be there.
What would you if they passed on Genty? I mean, I just don't think
I wouldn't be surprised anymore. I wouldn't be surprised.
I would say, sorry, everyone, on Sunday. I'd say, sorry, Adam's not here because he's taking a personal day. That would be insane. They wouldn't do that. They're not
fantasy and betting. You get over that stuff. I mean, you know, we all started as big fans, but eventually at some point you have to realize, all right, you know, there's other ways to create the happiness. And if your NFL team can't win a championship, you got to do it in fantasy football to win some bets.
No, that'd be the line that I draw, where I'm just like, I can't support this anymore. If they passed on Genty, that'd be insane. But they're not going to do that, and everything's going to be great. And that's what we're manifesting for the Dallas Cowboys here. All right, getting into it, I saw on ESPN they did a little bit of NFL draft buzz. They went through trade rumors, bold predictions, and I kind of want to throw this one your way because we've been talking about maybe some trades that make sense or some teams that could, you know, get a little bit more on their offense that would help for fantasy football. one of the proposed trades was late round 1 or round 2 trade that makes sense. Jacksonville Jaguars trading to be more aggressive to get another wide receiver alongside Brian Thomas Jr. So this was one where the Philadelphia Eagles trade their 32nd pick to the Jaguars for whatever, number 36 and 107. Jacksonville then goes ahead and adds an Emeka Egbuka. So that's what they said in this trade. Or if Luther Burden is there, they go get a Luther Burden. But I do think this is interesting because we've talked a little bit about Trevor Lawrence going into 2025. Looks like he's on track to play and be good to go. I know they're going to limit his reps when it comes to OTAs coming up here, but I think adding another receiver, just because of how good Brian Thomas Jr. was, if we want to say, hey, maybe Trevor Lawrence could make a jump for fantasy football and actually, prove what he's worth and the draft cost that he was drafted in, maybe that can help.
Yeah, well, look, if the Eagles are calling me, I'm going to hang up the phone. I don't want to make a deal with them because they're going to just take advantage of you. So that's number one.
That's true.
But yeah, look, Jacksonville certainly could use another receiver. I mean, is it surprising that Gabe Davis hasn't worked out? I mean, who could have seen that coming?
Stop it. So bad. They need help. Running backs, wide receivers, just feed Brian Thomas Jr. though, and we're not going to care.
Yeah, if you have Brian Thomas in Dynasty or you have plans on drafting him in fantasy football this year in the first round, yeah, that's all you want. I mean, as someone who had Brian Thomas last year, that finish to the season was phenomenal. So if you can get a repeat of that. Now, it did not happen with Trevor Lawrence. Does that concern you at all or no? Probably not, right?
No. Does it concern you? I think while I want to believe that Trevor Lawrence could, up his draft stock a little bit and finish better than he has in the past, because it hasn't been good at all, I think, Trevor Lawrence might be who he's shown us to be, and he's just going to be that QB 17 to 20 guy. Now, I think he could get better, because his fantasy finishes just have not been good these past few seasons. So you get in a more offensive minded guy, and you've got a new head coach in there who's really trying to help. They say, hey, we have to get better in the run game, and they say, hey, we also have to give you just a few more weapons other than Brian Thomas Jr. Sure, but I don't know if I could see him sneaking into a top 15 finish.
I don't see it either. Now, what you have to hope is that the coaching change does a lot for him, and we've just seen over the years a lot of quarterbacks being given up on, and they turn things around. Now, a lot of that had to do with them changing teams, sometimes multiple teams. The Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith. Lawrence's same team, and the expectations were really high for him. So he does need more help, though. The coaching change certainly could help. That gives you some optimism. But as far as fantasy, especially with what they have now on that team, yeah, it's top 15 is right around 15 would be optimistic.
And listen, I would love that. Wouldn't it be fun to just say, hey, go get Trevor Lawrence, he's this year's Baker Mayfield. And that's what they're really trying to do with Liam Cohen, right? Or they're at least hoping that he has this turnaround that says, all right, well, this is now we've got the offensive minded head coach in here and he's going to really help. But it's been bad. He has one top 12 finish in 4 seasons, QB8 in 2022. And he was also described as a generational talent coming into the draft when he was drafted. And it hasn't lived up to that expectation. So I agree with you. You don't necessarily want to give up on guys, but you also should kind of take into consideration when they show you, who they've been these past few years. You kind of have to be a little bit less, and that's coming from me, just a little bit less optimistic that they can break into the top 15, top 12, because he's kind of shown us. But it's been a roller coaster for Trevor Lawrence. Get him some help, and maybe that'll help him.
It has injuries as well. So there's been a lot of factors that haven't gone his way. He's played through some of those injuries too. There were times he could have missed time, and he tried to tough it out and be on the field, and it just has not worked out for a guy that was selected first overall in 2021. It's been an epic disappointment. Yeah.
Injuries, coaches, it's not been good. And he's got Brian Thomas Jr. there now. And so, yeah, this rumor adding another receiver, it wouldn't hurt. Let's just say that for fantasy football over there. So that's something we have to look for. And I'll say I was in a draft over the weekend, and there's going to be one time this year, Adam, where I do get to select Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors on the same team.
No,
it didn't happen.
It's not going to happen.
Yes, it will.
You really think that?
If I'm at 12 and people are asleep at the wheel, maybe they forget that they're on the clock and they go ahead and get Ashton Genty, but it has to be where I'm at 12 or else it'll never happen. But I'm manifesting it.
Are you talking best ball underdog?
Yes,
where
yes, best ball
isn't
underdog.
that even more difficult where the receivers go higher there?
He went, Malik Neighbors went 11, Brian Thomas Jr. went 12 in this draft.
Okay,
so you're one person away from saying maybe I want to get Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers, Christian McCaffrey in the first.
Not any time. So Genty, maybe, depending on landing spot, I could see him move up. I think McCaffrey, it's going to take some time. People are going to want to see him healthy. But I think as we get to late August, early September, if everything looks good, yes. But yeah, I think I find that
it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But I'm
but if you're telling me you saw one if you saw one with 11 and 12, then I guess it's not that far.
Yeah, Malik Neighbors 11, Brian Thomas Jr. 12.
So who went? Do you remember, or
Genty.
You have it? Who went before?
Genty went before. One pick before. Genty went 10.
Oh, Genty went 10.
Genty went 10. Christian McCaffrey, I have it right here. Christian McCaffrey went 13. Brock Bowers 14.
Okay.
If there's a tight end, if there's someone that really wants a tight end in the first round,
fell then?
Derrick Henry 15.
Okay.
Derrick Henry fell. That was kind of it. Because Ashton Genty is a solid first round pick right now in underdog. Days before the draft,
it's only
it's
going to go up too once he gets a team, right? There might be some people shying away right now, like, oh, I don't know where he's going to be, and then once he gets drafted, he moves up. But yeah, with Neighbors and Thomas, though, I find that I guess it's possible.
It's possible. It's possible for me. I'm going to make it happen.
Well, you want it. You're trying to manifest this.
Yeah, I would love it. I'd get the 12 spot
too.
and I'd get both of those guys and I'd be set. Then I'd try and go get, I don't know, a Kyron Williams in the third, since we both just faded him a little bit too much last season. You more than me, but faded him a little bit too much last season. You get your one running back and then you're on the way. I'm doing it. That's what's going to happen this year. And I can't wait to tell you when it does. All right. Just continuing on with just a little bit more news here. Speaking of Ashton Genty, I did want to say that SpyTech did say that they are open to taking talent for the Las Vegas Raiders. It feels like it's almost, one of the worst kept secrets in the NFL that the Raiders are going to go out and get Ashton Genty. I've also seen a few proposed trades where the Raiders do trade back and they say, hey, we're not going to take Genty. We're going to get a haul of picks and someone else is going to go up and get him. But I don't know, Adam. We've seen Pete Carroll before build around a backfield, and that's something that he's good at doing, that he likes doing. So they came out and said that the quote was, "I'm going to be careful about talking about any specific player, but more broadly to the running back question. We just saw Saquon Barkley change the Eagles in 1 year. Now they had a great team around him. I don't try to devalue any certain position." So maybe that feels like the right landing spot.
Yeah, judging from the quotes that I saw, it was like, yeah, we're definitely open to taking a running back early, and especially since so many people believe Genty's a generational talent and that much of a difference maker. It's still, a lot of people look at it and say, how can you take a running back that early? But the Barkley is just one example. Now, he didn't do it for the team that drafted him. Instead, it took a division rival. But again, it's all about, for the running back, it's just being on the right team and the right system. You just saw the difference with Barkley. We all knew he was a great talent, but with the Giants, the pieces around him just weren't there. Didn't have the great offensive line. Quarterback was a question. He had over 90 receptions in his rookie year. So we knew Barkley was capable of, and then he just went into the perfect team. Offensive line was great, mobile quarterback. It was just the perfect dream scenario. Not all of us saw it because he went late first round in drafts, and there were definitely some concerns for Barkley going to Philadelphia, but those that believed and drafted him were rewarded. He was probably on a lot of fantasy championship teams. Not saying that's going to be the same with Genty in Vegas, but yeah, it's certainly pointing in that direction. And to me, Genty, no matter where he goes, most likely he's going to be in that first round anyway.
Oh, 1,000. I don't think he's moving. There's just no, I couldn't even tell you where he would go where that would move him out of that first round pick. there's just no chance in drafts right now. I mean, even him going to Jacksonville, while it's not like the sexiest place for him to land, he's going to be the workhorse running back on whatever team he goes to. Jacksonville, Las Vegas, Chicago, Dallas. And I don't even see him getting all the way down to Dallas. I see him being a top 10 pick like Saquon Barkley was, like Bijan Robinson was. Like, he is going to reach those guys and be a top 10 pick. It just kind of depends on where he goes. And I honestly could see Las Vegas getting some calls. And Jacksonville, he was mocked to Jacksonville in the Athletics recent mock draft, where again, not as sexy of a pick, and we don't, necessarily absolutely love the offense, but it's just, he's going to be a workhorse running back. We want him every single time.
Yeah, and there are still people who shy away from these rookie running backs, but when you're drafted that early, more often than not, those guys tend to explode in fantasy.
Yeah, it's gonna be different when we get to, but again, deep running back class. It's gonna be different when we talk about later guys, a Travion Henderson, a Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson. Those are a little bit different, but again, it really all depends on landing spot. And we're going to talk a little bit more about these running backs as we go throughout this week. But yeah, there could be some that really shake up the NFL and fantasy football landscapes for 2025 as well. That was the Fantasy Life Water Cooler. Again, fantasylife.com. That's where you can go and subscribe to our newsletter in your inbox, and 100% free 7 days a week. And again, Thor 500 is live, fantasylife.com, 100% free. All the articles that you need to get ready for that NFL draft, just days away, you can go and check out over there. I want to go through some true or false statements here, Adam, and see what you believe draft edition. We're going to go through those coming up next. Excited to be here getting you guys ready for that NFL draft, but just remember, Fantasy Sports Radio also has you covered for the NFL draft. So they're going to have pick by pick coverage Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. So you're going to want to tune in because it feels like it's going to be a really, really great night. And hopefully, Adam, we get some fireworks here for fantasy football. It feels like we're going to, though. No matter what, there's always some drama. Something's bound to happen.
Yeah, there definitely will be a surprise, something that no one sees coming. It tends to happen year after year. You hear all these rumors leading up to it. Many of them don't pan out, and then all of a sudden we're just blindsided, and we're like, wow, no one talked about that. So that's what makes it fun. At the end of the day, though, for our purposes, yes, we want to see some good fantasy landing spots.
Please, that's all, tell all the coaches, tell all the GMs, look, doesn't matter. Don't draft for team needs. Just go and get any wide receiver, tight end, running back, quarterback that you can, and it'll be great for us. So I wanted to play a little bit of true or false here, Adam, and see where we line up heading into this NFL draft. So I've got some questions for you, and you could say true or false at the end. So let me start with this stat. 18 tight ends have been taken in the top 10 since Hall of Famer Mike Ditka in 1961. Just 2 over the past decade. So it was Kyle Pitts and TJ Hawkinson. True or false? Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland will be the next tight ends taken in the top 10.
I'm going to say true. It definitely feels that way, more so with Warren. You've seen the Jets as a potential landing spot, maybe even the Bears. So I do think he goes top 10. It doesn't look like top 5, top 6, but I think after that, there's definitely a couple of teams there that could take a tight end. So I'm going to say that is true.
I'm gonna agree with you. I think, tight ends, I know top 10, when we look past and say, well, they haven't had really great, phenomenal careers. There have been some good ones. I don't know if that means that they're always going to be these difference makers found in the first round, or the guys that go in the top 10. But I agree with you. I'm glad you shouted out the Bears too, because I know that, some people are saying, hey, we want to go out and get a running back. But I've seen a couple mock drafts where Chicago gets a tight end. And Thor Nystrom has also said this before, by the way, which would be kind of crazy, but San Francisco going out and getting a Tyler Warren at 11 would blow my mind, actually, and I don't expect that to happen, but I don't know. You never know with San Francisco. They could do something crazy.
Yeah, that would be surprising to me.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know what we would do with that. And that might be a worst case scenario for us fantasy-wise, George Kittle, Tyler Warren. But maybe they look at it and they say, hey, we need, again, more weapons. Maybe Brandon Ayuk isn't going to be good to go week 1. And Tyler Warren can do a lot. We've talked with Thor about that. We talked with Connor Rogers about that. But that one would shock me.
Yeah, I would definitely be surprised by that since, it's a team that has other needs as well. So, yeah, that would definitely be surprising to me.
Right. Well, let me ask you this really quickly too, because this question has been on my mind with Tyler Warren. Do you think this could be true or false? But do you think the best NFL landing spot, the landing spot that he's mocked to the most, has more than recently been him going to the Colts? Do you think that's the worst case scenario for fantasy though? Him going to the Colts, or do you think that he's going to be just this phenomenal tight end where we've talked with him a lot today and he's going to be a difference maker? It feels like to me Tyler Warren is going to be a player that helps teams win immediately, and the Colts have a desperate need to get it right at tight end. But Anthony Richardson, we've talked about the completion percentage, how just as a passer he is not developed. Could that actually be one of the worst case scenarios for us in fantasy?
Yes, even though they certainly could use a tight end, it's been a major problem for them. But based on what we saw with Anthony Richardson, how could you feel confident? I mean, that completion percentage below 50%. So we just look at how we were ranking or deciding start sit with receivers when Richardson was at quarterback. We were shying away. We were scared to start anyone for the most part. So yeah, it would not be ideal for fantasy. We know the talent is elite, and if they're going to draft them that early, they're going to find ways to use them. But you cannot expect they're definitely better fantasy landing spots than Indianapolis with Richardson at quarterback. And then some people might say, well, what if Daniel Jones is the quarterback? Is that much different? I mean, they both have major problems. I mean, Jones does like to throw the short pass a lot more. Just look at Wan'Dale Robinson with the Giants. So maybe it's better with Daniel Jones. He just peppers him with targets short. But yeah, it wouldn't be ideal with Indianapolis.
That's what I'm thinking, and it's one of those things where you separate NFL conversations with fantasy football. And again, Tyler Warren, in all the mock drafts that I've seen, he's been the most consistent going to the Colts, being their tight end that they draft. And listen, I want to believe too that Tyler Warren is just so good that he is going to be able to elevate that offense. And that's what they need at tight end. Like, not only do they need a tight end, they had a combined 467 receiving yards out of their tight end room last year. That is absolutely awful. So they need some help, and getting some more help to Anthony Richardson will obviously hopefully elevate him. But yeah, it's the conversation of looking at his completion percentage, looking at him as a passer, and hopefully believing that he's going to be able to step up. But if he's not, that does bring the fantasy value down. I want to believe that Tyler Warren's going to be able to elevate no matter what, and he's just going to be peppered with targets if he goes to the Colts. But it is an interesting conversation of, okay, well, if he does go to the Colts, that might be the worst case for us, unfortunately.
Hey, if your quarterback is completing 47.7% of his passes, it's a major problem. Even if you think he could get better, it's not ideal for fantasy.
No, he's going to win that quarterback battle, though, right?
He should.
Yes, he should. He's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be great, and Anthony Richardson is going to be great in 2025. Let's just say that. All right, let me get back to a true false here. True or false, the Packers should use their first round draft pick on a wide receiver, more specifically on Matthew Golden. True or false?
I'm going to say, well, with Golden, I don't think he'll be there. So
okay, a wide receiver then. Use their first round pick on a wide, which by the way, they haven't done since 2002. They haven't drafted a wide receiver in the first round.
Yeah, it's insane. We remember when Rodgers was there and they had that good class, the Justin Jefferson class, and they just kept passing and passing. It didn't make any sense. They certainly could use one, especially with Christian Watson more than likely not ready to start the year. He was their deep threat. You could knock him all you want, and yes, he gets injured a lot, and there are people who just are automatically crossing him off their list because of that, but he was their one guy that you had to worry about stretching the defense going deep. They really don't have that. They have a lot of similar wide receivers, so they definitely could use a speed receiver to stretch the defense and be a threat out there, and I don't understand why they never do.
At this point, it has to be a bit, right? They just say, nah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to take a receiver in the first. I don't. If any year, though, you look at this team and you say, maybe they changed that tune. That was one of my hot takes when we did the podcast with myself and Amanda and Gene Clemens. But it was that they actually do take a wide receiver in the first round. And I agree that now with Matthew Golden, he's fast, though, 4.29 40 at the combine, and he's just 21 years old. So he's really going to be someone that I watch out for during this draft and see where he lands, because I might want a lot of Matthew Golden in 2025 drafts. But if he's not there, just getting someone, because Christian Watson, what the best case scenario is that he comes back in December. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but when you tear your ACL week 18, 2024, your timeline is pretty thin there for him to come back.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect him to play, or if he does, not much at all. So receivers certainly,
they need help.
They do.
And it's, they just give Jordan Love some help. Are you drafting Jordan Love this year? It feels like the same conversation with CJ Stroud, which you could look at it two different ways, where you say, wow, they're both cheap right now. People are passing up on both of those guys.
Yeah, again, because they're coming off such disappointing seasons, and that's always what you want to do in fantasy, is try and find the guy that is undervalued, coming off a bad year, that could bounce back. Love, I don't see me drafting him this year. I think I might have only had on one team last year, so I had him 2 years ago. That was obviously the year to have him. So that's what you're trying to find is the next guy that's lower on that list that could exceed expectations. You had to pay a high price for Love last year. It didn't work out. So right now, I don't envision him being as part of my quarterback plan.
He might be part of mine, but you know me. An underdog story. You're telling me that I can get discounted CJ Stroud, Jordan Love. Maybe. It depends on what they do in this draft.
I could see CJ Stroud bouncing back, but clearly the offensive line has got to be better, because that was... Well, he had a lot of injuries to the receivers as well, but the offensive line was a big problem for him. And you could tell he just never felt comfortable back there, because when you're constantly under pressure, sometimes you perceive the pressure's there when it's not. You're just so used to it. But he was sacked 52 times last year, and that was the biggest problem. And when you're under that pressure and you're worried about your offensive line, it also forces you to make some throws that you don't want to make that lead to interceptions. And we knew he wasn't going to repeat the interceptions in his rookie year. Only had 5 in 15 games, but 12 last year. And the injuries too at the receiver position did not help circumstances for CJ Stroud.
Man, 2024 CJ Stroud compared to the 2023 version we had was just night and day. And again, you can blame the offensive line. Some of it's on him. Some of it is on his receivers getting hurt. And I don't know, we can blame Bobby Slowick, I guess, as well. The life comes at you fast. Remember when he was interviewing as a head coach, Bobby Slowick? You remember that? Life happens fast, but
you got to take advantage when you're hot, because you know it could be instantly gone. And
that's crazy.
The other thing too, with these rookie quarterbacks, you come out, you have a great year. Now NFL teams see you on tape a whole season, and how do you adjust? And that was another factor for Stroud that didn't go well for him.
QB 28 in fantasy points per game. That's disgusting for CJ Stroud last year.
Yeah,
I mean, that is...
If you drafted him last year, then your season might have been done pretty early. Yeah. No, the thing is, when you take a quarterback that early, you feel invested. And sometimes if you see signs early, you got to back away. Like, you should have... It's easier said than done, because people just say, oh, well, I drafted Stroud early. It's just 2 weeks. It's just 3 weeks. He'll turn it around. And then it gets to a point where you got to... And that's where good fantasy players come in. Like, yeah, something's not right here. It's not happening. I'm going to the waiver wire and picking up someone else just in case. And it could have been a Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Bo Nix later in the year. And that's the key. And sometimes you got to forget about draft position once the season begins. And it's hard for some people, because
he was expensive last year.
Yeah, I didn't have him anywhere. I just thought it was too pricey.
Yeah, it was tough, but that is something that you and I talk about a lot on this show, is just knowing knowing when to accept it and when to move on. And that is definitely hard when you take draft and where you took this guy, his ADP, and where he was in your drafts. That's just the tougher part of when to know it's time to let go. All right, we're going to continue on here. We're going to go through just NFL draft capital. We've talked about this on the show quite a lot, but just kind of going through where we can expect running backs to produce the most. Same with wide receivers, quarterbacks. We're going to do that coming up next. Okay, fantasy football fans, sure, NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it, and all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Oh, we are absolutely getting you ready for that NFL draft, just days away. FantasyLife.com is also getting you ready. We've got all those articles, the Thor 500, the rookie supermodel, the best bets for the NFL draft, whatever you need and whatever you want to know, it is going to be there at FantasyLife.com, 100% free. Adam, there's this great article from Ian Hartitz, first of all, just does a great job at everything he writes at Fantasy Life, but he did kind of this value of NFL draft capital and how those players perform for fantasy football early in their careers. And I don't think it would be a shock for me to tell you that high producing rookies are, somewhat rare, but running backs produce the most for fantasy football. That doesn't surprise you?
No, not at all. I mean,
I didn't think so.
Yeah, it's good to look at things like that. There's always outliers and exceptions, but usually the higher draft capital, the more production you're going to get. Again, especially a running back, right? We talk about some of the running backs that go very early. There's a reason teams really don't want to spend that early pick on a running back. But when you have an elite talent and it's pretty much can't miss, you have to do it.
Yeah, so he went through some rookies from 2015 to 2024, and he found out that running back's easily the most fantasy-friendly position when we're talking about rookies right now. 29 first-year rookies managed to produce top 24 numbers over the last decade. And so that's, first of all, huge in and of itself. It goes to show you that, sometimes you're going to get a hit on wide receivers. There were 12 that managed to finish as top 24 players at the position from 2015 to 2024. There were 4 tight ends. And there were 6 quarterbacks to produce top 12 numbers in fantasy points per game. And Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix are 2 of the guys that are in that conversation. So running backs are the ones that we usually do like to target. And I will say, though, the other side of this is that rookies that are drafted on day 1 or day 2, Adam, are the ones that majority-wise perform the best. And so that's not to say that we can't have someone like Bucky Irving last season where he just came out and we kind of knew. You and I talked about Bucky Irving a lot where we said, hey, I don't know what's going to happen here, but Bucky Irving is a better running back than Rachaad White. And all of a sudden it really did come and it really did happen. So sometimes it does happen, right? But a majority of the time, Adam, you're going to see those day 1, day 2 picks, and those rookie running backs are going to be the ones that really run away for you in fantasy.
Yeah, and there's always exceptions, but you don't want to bet on that. When you see something happening consistently, more than likely that's what's going to occur. There's always outliers, but if you take too many bets on those outliers, it's not going to wind up well for you.
Yeah, that's why I feel like, we mentioned this at the top of the show, right? The Denver Broncos, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Dallas Cowboys are teams, and the Chicago Bears, I should say as well. Those are teams where we say, okay, yes, adding a running back there, we might chase those guys, to be totally honest, especially me with the Denver Broncos. If they go out and get Omarion Hampton, like that is a running back room that's pretty wide open for him. Same with the Raiders, same with the Dallas Cowboys, depending on who they land day 1 or day 2. But there are some other teams, Adam, that I'm looking at and I'm saying, all right, like if the Cleveland Browns decide to add someone day 2, that could be another rookie where we're looking at him and saying, you know what, I am going to target him, whether it's in these 0 RB drafts. You're not going to push him up too far, but Jerome Ford's the only other guy there. We've talked about Nick Chubb before and just said, unfortunately, and listen, we love Nick Chubb, but it feels like the best of Nick Chubb might be behind him for fantasy football purposes. So he's going to be cheap in drafts, but if they add someone on that Cleveland Browns team, if they add someone to the New England Patriots, day 1, day 2, like we're going to target those guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams right now where you're looking at and you're wondering, are they going to add a running back to the backfield? What it's going to do? You mentioned Denver last year, they were actually really good in run blocking and pass blocking, and yet when Javonte Williams was on the field, it just didn't happen. Without him, they actually performed well. So you get a running back, especially if they draft one in round 1 that potentially could be a 3-down back with that offense and the way it came along and got better as the season progressed. I mean, that's going to be massive for fantasy. So that's clearly an easy team. But then, you have a team like Pittsburgh, right? A lot of people love Jaylen Warren. I know I do. I draft him like every single year. And when he gets the opportunity, he's always been good. You look at what he's done the last few years. He's had like at least 5 yards per touch, 3 straight seasons. He's got the ability to break off these explosive runs. He's good after contact. So we're hoping, especially if you're drafting now or if you have Jaylen Warren in Dynasty, you're hoping they add someone day 3, right? You don't want to see day 1, day 2, because then you're a little worried. But Jaylen Warren's a guy that we'll be watching to see if Pittsburgh adds anyone day 1 or day 2.
What do you think about New England adding, just adding? I think like Ramondre Stevenson has been someone that we've talked about. Last year was weird though. I mean, when they were like, oh, we're going to bench Ramondre. He's not going to start this game. It was just an odd season. So I don't know if Ramondre Stevenson at this point in his career is going to be someone that completely goes away. But you tell me you add a day 2 guy in that backfield that we're not going to be saying, well, that could be a split depending on who it is.
Or, it could be maybe a pass-catching running back, too, that they feel adds elements to the offense. So, that's another one. It was very frustrating last year if you had Stevenson and, being penalized for the fumbles, not being in there. He's going to start. He's not going to start. It was so just weird. A headache. But new coaching staff, so we'll see how that goes. But, I could see them maybe getting like a pass-catching running back, especially.
The one I'm nervous about? The Giants. Giants out of running back, and our Tyrone Tracy shares are gone. But Rico Dowdle's there too, right? He's the one that went over there in the off season so far.
Well, Dowdle to Carolina.
Oh yeah, what did I say?
Giants. You were talking about Tyrone Tracy.
I'm talking about Tyrone Tracy. That's my bad. But those 2 teams, by the way, Giants and Carolina, with Chuba Hubbard over there and Tyrone Tracy on the other side. Like, I could see it happening though.
Yeah, that's one you have to worry about for sure if the Giants had a running back. Tracy was good last year. I was targeting him in a lot of drafts, but he was cheap. It was around 12, 13, 14, depending on when you drafted, just because I didn't have a lot of faith in Devin Singletary. And Tracy was good. He had the opportunity, but if they draft someone, that could change. So there's many backfields that you're looking at that you look at rankings now and where they're going in these best ball drafts, and it could quickly change drastically after the draft is complete this weekend.
Yep, it's definitely going to change. That's why we're excited to be breaking it down with you here, and of course at fantasylife.com. So make sure you head over there. Let's continue on, Adam, with maybe some potential draft bets that we are either going in on or maybe we're fading. We're going to give you those coming up next. You know what? It is the most wonderful time of the year, Adam, and we're excited to be getting you ready for that NFL draft. Make sure you keep it locked right here, though, on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, because right after us, you have the Jeff Ratcliffe Show, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern. But we're going to continue getting you ready, going through some potential best bets here that we're looking at, maybe. And again, fantasylife.com, we've got the bet tracker, we've got the Betting Live newsletter. If I remember, we've had this conversation before. You're not a big NFL draft bettor, right?
No, I'm not. It's just, I think if you have the time, it can be profitable. But since I do daily betting with NBA and MLB right now, I haven't had the time to do the digging on that. But I'll leave that to others on Fantasy Life.
I feel like that's fair.
I can't do everything, Kendall. Come
on. I thought you could. You're doing your fantasy baseball, which is crazy, by the way. You got fantasy baseball going on. You're watching the NBA. I just figured you were also doing NFL draft bets. That's fine.
Nah, I have to. The capacity gets thin somewhere. So I enjoy the draft, follow the draft, and everything. But then it gets into betting. It's just like, got to draw the line somewhere. So I'll check our guys out, see what they say, and maybe tell a little bit.
The interesting one to me always, and I know we've talked a lot today about the quarterbacks and where they're going to go, but it's total quarterbacks drafted in the first round. The over 2.5 is sitting at -400. Under 2.5, Adam's sitting at plus 280 over at BetMGM. I'm still shaking my head sitting here, because if we believe that, by the way, if you think, okay, well, it's gonna go over 2.5, which the market is implying at -400 that is absolutely going to happen, then you have to look around and say, okay, well, that means the Steelers probably are going to take a quarterback with their first pick. And this was brought up. I think the odds have gone down. I need to recheck it here, but them selecting a quarterback with their first pick, I don't think is a bad bet to make. If really truly 2.5 is set at -400, you have to assume that whether it's going to be Shedeur Sanders that falls to them, or it's going to be Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shuck, like that's a quarterback that's a team that might just go and get their quarterback.
Yeah, look, the betting market can be wrong, but when you see odds like that, that's telling you we're likely going to see 3 quarterbacks at least in the first round. So, yeah, and Pittsburgh is definitely a team there. They don't currently, what is Mason Rudolph right now? That's it. We're waiting on Aaron Rodgers. We all think he's going to be there, but he's not. And what if he retires? So, yeah, Pittsburgh is definitely one of those teams that we expect to take a quarterback there.
It could be, well, listen, though, position of first drafted player, Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback is plus 280. So maybe it could be not, maybe it just is the Saints, and you just have to look at it and say, well, it's going to be the New Orleans Saints that's going to take their quarterback. It's crazy to believe. If we talked about this a month ago and you told me that someone else was going to be taken in the first round and it wasn't only going to be Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, I probably would have laughed, to be totally honest. I wouldn't have believed it. I just can't believe that that's where we're at right now. In a class that, Adam, everyone has said this is not a good quarterback class, and we're gonna jump and say that 3 quarterbacks are gonna go in the first round. It blows my mind.
Teams get desperate. They hope that they're right and other teams are wrong, and they can land that quarterback that can be a difference maker. We see it all the time. You guys just go through the history of the drafts, and you see the first round quarterbacks that are taken. How many of them have failed? It just happens all the time. It's not easy to figure out who is going to adjust to the NFL, and that's what happens. We get closer to the draft, there's desperation, and teams are hoping and see things and like, yeah, this can be our guy, let's get him, and a lot of times it doesn't work out.
Look at we talked about the 2022 NFL draft. Those quarterbacks, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell. The good one to come out of it, of course, was looking at it, Brock Purdy, Bailey Zappi, I guess, if you want to go next. But that was bad. But that was the 3rd round, I guess, is what I have to put the caveat there. That, I mean, because Malik Willis was the 86th overall pick, and then they just went from there. And so Kenny Pickett, 1st round, 20th overall, 5th round for Sam Howell. That was a bad class. So maybe they're going to be better than that.
Yeah, and the one outlier was Brock Purdy going really late. So, yeah,
262 really late. That's crazy. Skylar Thompson. Sorry to leave Skylar Thompson out of it. 7th round, 247. And someone's going to be better than those guys. Well, maybe not Brock Purdy.
You would think so, but again, that's the shift in quarterbacks with potentially 3 going in the first round is definitely one of the more surprising things that has transpired over the last couple of weeks.
Position of first drafted player for the Dallas Cowboys. Wide receiver plus 105. Then offensive lineman plus 425, cornerback plus 450. Oh, you're not taking a running back. Wow.
Yeah, I don't think they are. No, they're not in the first round.
Are they gonna break your heart this year and do this again?
Nah, they'll get a running back later. They have to.
No, you keep telling yourself that. That's totally fine. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us today. Again, stick around. You've got the Jeff Ratcliffe Show coming up after us. FantasyLife.com is where you can go subscribe to that newsletter. Check out all of those articles. We'll see you tomorrow.